In the name of Lord Jesus, I speak. Have you finished the assignments? You have handed? You have handed in already? The 2 assignments I gave you. Sorry? Lunch. What do you mean, which one?
Which one?
I gave you 2.
Finish the first one.
3. Oh, thank you. First one is what? List down all the. List down. Why the Apostolic Church fell, isn't it? List down the points, am I? Yeah. Zion, chapter 1 to chapter 3. Okay. The second question is about Omri and Ahab, all their deeds, am I? The bad things that they had done. And what is the third one? I can't remember.
Read First John, 2nd John, 3rd John. Summarize.
So, have they handed in the assignments already?
What, the first John one?
All of them.
Oh, yes, they've handed in the first 2.
The first 2 they did. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, because I'm going to give them answers. I don't have time to mark, okay? So, I'm going to email you or whoever. So much. Okay? Alright, now, in the name of Jesus, we continue with our study on the book of Micah. We come to chapter 5. Right, as far as I'm concerned, this chapter is one of the most difficult chapters, not only in the book of Micah itself. Actually, it can be considered as one of the most difficult chapters in many of the prophetic books. Right? Now, you find that in this chapter, it talks about Assyria, and it also talks about Nimrod, which is the place of origin of what? Of Babylon, right? And we also find that here it talks about the remnant of Jacob, and it also talks about, the what is that? The 7 shepherds and 8 princely men, and who are these people? Okay, now so it's quite difficult, to tie this into a historical spectrum. Okay, now as far as I'm concerned, I can't fit it into, the history of the chosen people of God very accurately. I'm struggling with this. Okay, now some people said, this chapter could be written, during the time of Hezekiah. Now I want you to read the passage. I want to read Jeremiah. Please turn to Jeremiah. Do you know that Jeremiah actually quoted a verse from Micah? Okay, we look at Jeremiah. Let me see. Chapter 26. All right. Now, Jeremiah chapter 26. Here it talks about how Jeremiah was saved from being killed. I want you to read verse 18, okay? Chapter 26, verse 18. Micah of Moresheth prophesied in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and spoke to all the people of Judah, saying, Thus says the Lord of hosts, Zion shall be plowed like a field, Jerusalem shall become heaps of ruins, and the mountain of the temple like the bare hills of the forest. Now, if you look at Now, verse 19. Did Hezekiah, king of Judah, and all Judah ever put him to death? Did he not fear the Lord and seek the Lord's favor? Okay, and so people, began to turn away from evil. Now, it seems to me that this verse actually appears in the last verse of chapter 3 of Micah. Right? Now, I'm only guessing here. So the King Hezekiah, I think the period of his rulership probably concluded when Micah was prophesying, was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem in Micah chapter 3. That's why from chapter 4 onwards, you find that it is no longer history-related issues. Okay? Now, so it's more like, prophecy 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No 8, 7 only. You see, no one laugh at me. These people don't know your Bible. Okay, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now, so this section of the scriptures probably is more on prophecy concerning the end time true church. You get what I'm saying now? Right? Now, that's why I do not believe that chapter 5 is talking about a particular incident that happens in history. Right? Now, the other thing I want you to look at, if you look at verse 7 and verse 8, here it talks about the remnant of Jacob, right? It's like they were being scattered in different, communities, or put it this way, different parts of the world, and they brought what? Grace to others. Now, verse 8, you find that the remnant of Jacob became very strong. They were like lions. That could what? That could tear, animals or whatever alike into pieces. Now, historically speaking, you know that when Assyria, came to conquer, the northern kingdom, it was by the power of God that Assyria was destroyed. You find that if you read the history, the people of God actually did not even get involved in fighting against the Assyrian. Is that also? I'm talking to a group of people who have no clue about history. Isaiah. We turn to Isaiah. It's quite boring when you speak to a group of people who don't know much about history. I'm talking about Bible history. Okay, now, Isaiah chapter 37. Okay, now let's look at how the Assyrians were destroyed. Chapter 37, verse 36. Now, then the angels of the Lord went out and killed in the camp of the Assyrian 185,000. And when people arose early in the morning, there were the corpses all dead. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and went away, returned home, and remained in Nineveh. Right? Now, later on, you'll find that he was killed as well. Right? Now, who destroyed the army of Assyria? God himself. Right? Now, you find that the people of God did not get involved at all. Right? Now, with this in mind, when you look at Micah chapter 5, okay, verse 8, if you didn't get, then just raise your hand, okay? I'll let you know. Okay, now, here in chapter 5, verse 8, it says, the remnant of Jacob shall be amongst the Gentiles like a lion amongst the beasts of the forest. Right? Now, you find that it's like, the remnant of Jacob became so powerful, like nothing could, come in their way. Right? They could just remove, any form of hindrances. But again, when you look at history, it does not seem to appear that way. Right? That's why I believe this chapter is not talking about history or any particular period of history concerning the chosen people of God in particular. Right? Now, how are we going to look at this this chapter then? Okay. Now, before we try to talk about this chapter, we must know how to read the chapter in the first place. Okay. Now, so you find that when you see Assyria, being mentioned, yeah, at least how many times? Let me see. Verse 5, verse 6, 5 one time, 6 two times. Okay? Now, so when Assyria is being mentioned, we have to take it in a spiritual, look at it from a spiritual perspective. Right? Now, Assyria represents what? Opposing forces against. Okay, I'm not turning it on. Okay, Assyria represents the opposing forces against the community of God. Okay, I think this is the principle that we will follow throughout the book, right? Throughout explaining the book, and otherwise it becomes very difficult to derive any teachings from our reading. Now, again, class, I want to bring to your attention. Now, we understand that the Old Testament scriptures is written for our learning. Okay, for our learning. And the prophets have inquired into the grace that would come. Okay, now we know that the grace has already been given to us, after the establishment of the church. Right, so, most of the accounts in the prophetic books refers to things that would happen in the end time true church. Okay, so this is one of them. Right, today we are going to look at it. Okay, now there are one or two more points or issues that we need to resolve before we read this chapter. Yeah. Now I want you to first turn to chapter 5. By the way, are you with me? Not physically, I mean logically. Thank you. Okay, come back. Chapter 5. Now, verse 1, yeah? Now, if you look at if you look at the third line, if you are using NKJV, he said, he has laid siege against us. Who is this he? Because when you read the preceding chapter, that is chapter 4, there is no mention of any nation. Okay? And in fact, in chapter 4, the last verse only talks about Zion. So who is this he? Who is this he? I have given you a clue already. Huh? God lays siege against them? Okay. What did God do? Hey? Sorry? Assyria. Yes, Assyria. Because I already told you in verse 6 and verse 5 and verse 6, am I right? Yeah? So, okay. Now, in the chapter itself, 5 and 6 talks about Assyria. Yeah? And then, historically speaking, in the time of Micah, the superpower was Assyria. Very good. Okay? Now, as we have said before, Assyria represents opposing forces against the community of God. Yeah? Right? Now, so when you read this chapter, you should bear this in mind. All right? Assyria is the opposing force that goes against the church. You understand what I'm saying? Right? That in this way, it makes more sense as far as I'm concerned, anyway. This is how I make sense of my own reading. Otherwise, I struggle what he's talking about. Okay? Alright, now. Alright, now we look at chapter. I want to show you some example first, yeah? Turn back to, where is it? Isaiah, okay? So, chapter 5 was written with some historical background at the time in mind, okay? Now, I want you to read, where is it? Okay, we read chapter 36 of Isaiah and see what this guy had done. Chapter 36, we read verse 1. Now it came to pass in the 14th year of King Hezekiah that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified city of Judah and took them. Okay? Now, that was the situation at the time when Hezekiah was the king. Alright? Now, according to the introduction given in the book of Micah, chapter 1, verse 1, there were 3 kings mentioned. Who was the first one? Jotham. The second one is a bad guy. Everyone knows the bad guy. Okay. The third? Hezekiah. So, it was during that time that this guy here, the Assyrian, came to attack Judah and besiege the city. Now, so, Micah wrote the prophecy with this background information in mind, but is not exactly talking about the history at the time or the event that was happening at that time. Okay? Now, like what we said before, this is used to help us understand how opposing forces can go against the community of God. Are you getting me? Thank you. At least 2 or 3 people nodding in support of what I said. Is it okay now? Okay, we turn back to chapter 5, verse 1. Now, please turn to Micah, chapter 5, verse 1. Now, here, now gather yourself in troops, O daughter of troops. He has laid siege against us. Meaning, it's like saying that the people of God, should what? Should stand up for themselves and to fight against, this guy here who has besieged the city. Alright? Now, you find that when these people came, what would they do? They will strike the judge of Israel with a rod on the cheek. This is like what? Humiliation. Okay? Now, I want you to read, I'm going into details again, not too much. Okay, we turn to Job, yeah? Job chapter 16. We read verse 10. Job chapter 16, we read verse 10. They gave at me with their mouth, they strike me reproachfully on the cheek. They gathered together against me. Alright? Now, so, to strike at one's cheek is like to humiliate the person. Alright? Now, you find that actually when you read that part of the scriptures in Isaiah, you can see how this Assyria humiliated not only the people of God, and he also spoke very arrogantly against the Lord God himself. And because of that, God became very furious. Right? So he killed all of them by sending his angel. Right? You get what I'm saying? Right? That is a kind of humiliation. Right? Now, we come to verse 2. It seems that here there is a change of tone, or there's a change of descriptions. It's talking about Bethlehem. It's a very small city, and most people believe that this is the prophecy concerning the coming of Messiah. And in fact, this verse is also quoted in one of the Gospels. Okay? Now, you need to look at this in this way, yeah? You know, class, I mentioned this before. When we study prophecy, all right, there is a way to look at it. All right? Now, the best way to understand the prophecy is to look for any confirmation from the New Testament scriptures. Right? Now, in this case, there is confirmation. That is in Matthew, I think. Okay? All right? Now, but we also need to understand that the prophecy in the scriptures are multi-layered, many layered. Okay? Right. If this is the prophecy, I don't know how to draw it. Any artists here? This is the first layer. You see, hopeless. Okay, never mind. Second, and let's say third. Okay. Now, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, when you remove this layer, right, you see another aspect concerning the prophecy. Okay? Let's say the second layer has come to pass, and then you see another aspect concerning the prophecy. You get what I'm saying? Okay? Now, even though this prophecy is about Jesus, okay? Now, here is about the physical Jesus. But we also know that the Spirit is also Jesus. Is that not true? Yeah? We also understand that. Where are you? Oh, here. Okay? Now, we also understand that the Spirit must eventually rule in us. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah? So, in this light, it seems that one prophecy actually contains what? Different aspects of the teachings concerning Jesus or Messiah. And the first, like what we say, is the coming of the physical Jesus to accomplish the plan of salvation on the cross. And the second is Jesus must be in the church to guide and to rule. And finally, you find that the Spirit must rule in our heart. Is that clear? Or you are totally blurred, confused? Not sure what I'm talking about. Do you understand? You want me to speak Scottish English so you can understand me better? Okay, one more time. You know, every prophecy, with every prophecy, there are many layers. Okay, that's why we say a prophecy can be multi-layered. Why? You understand what I'm saying? Okay? Now, for example, when you read Micah, okay, Micah chapter 5, and it's mentioned in Matthew somewhere chapter 2. Chapter 2, Okay, now it's talking about the physical Jesus, yeah? And this bit is fulfilled, right? But we know that, the patterns of the church is that, this is about, the second part of Micah is about the end time true church, isn't it? Right? So this prophecy here goes beyond This aspect, you understand what I'm saying? Goes beyond the coming of Christ in the flesh to save the world. Right? Now, so it can mean Jesus being in the church. Yeah, to direct the church and to rule the church. Alright, now let's say this one is past. Okay, now when you come to the third, alright, now you find that it means eventually for the church to become perfect, Jesus must rule in our heart and the church as a whole. Is that clear now? This is only an example. Okay, never mind. Okay, now we come back. All right, now we look at verse 2. Now, here is like an encouragement. Not only is prophetic in nature, actually is an encouragement, to the people of God, more so to us today. Okay? Now, look at Bethlehem. Though you are little among the 1,000 of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel. It's basically to tell them, Jesus would come from this small place. Yeah? Negligible. No one will recognize it. But if we talk about famous places, everyone knows. Is that not true? Give me an example. The 7 wonders of the world. Everyone knows. Yeah. But for Bethlehem, no one would even pay attention to it. It's so tiny. Right? Now, so I think the lesson here is very clear. God always uses something very small, to achieve His great will. Okay? Now, that's why, in the church, the lesson is this. We must not despise ourselves. Okay? We must not say that we are useless, we cannot do anything for God. Alright? Now, the important thing is, we must always remain humble before God when we are serving Him. Right? That is the right attitude. Now, we look at what Paul says in, for example, 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians. God used what is deemed foolish by the world, to nullify the knowledge of the wise. Is that not true? Yeah? They say, Jesus was crucified. It's like, Jesus was destroyed. Satan thought that, Jesus, was put away by being crucified on the cross. Little did he realize that actually through this means, he achieved what? The salvation for the entire humanity. That is the wisdom of God. Right? Something that people, the people of the world deem to be very stupid, very foolish, and yet God can make use of it to achieve His own will. Alright? Now, so this is the idea. This chapter is talking about the church. That's why the church must have this clear idea. Right? Now, the church can be persecuted. We need to understand God is in the church. Don't forget that. If you are the most powerful man in the church, alright? Okay? But remember, there's someone who is far more superior to you. And that person is God Himself. Alright? That's the idea we need to understand in the church. Alright? Especially when you find that, the church is going through a period of struggle. So what we should do is all of us should kneel down and pray, right, to God, believing that He would lead the church out of the trouble. This is our faith in God. This is our faith. Okay? Right, now we come back. Now look at verse 2 again. The one to be ruler in Israel, who is going forth are from everlasting. So He is the eternal God, from everlasting to everlasting. There's a... Shall I talk about this? No, it's okay. Okay, we come back, verse 3. Now you find that for the power of God to be fully manifested, now it seems that the church must become perfect. If you look at verse 3, again here it talks about, she who is in labor, which is similar to chapter 4, verse 10. Now, in the context of the church, Paul talks about this what? He has to labor again in birth for the believers. Why? Because they were very unspiritual. That's why he has to toil and labor, The church has to go through trial and tribulation, until what? Until the church becomes perfect. Right? Now, so sometimes we need to bear this in mind, okay? Trouble happen, actually, I believe are good for us. So that we begin to think about our relationship with God. Right? Now, so in the process, you find that, we will do whatever we can with the help of God to refine ourselves. Okay? That is very important. And we reach what? Maturity. Maturity. This is a necessary process we have to go through because we are far from perfection, to be honest about it. In every aspect of our life, we find that we have fallen short of the glory of God. Even at home, at school, wherever, in church, we have fallen short of the glory of God. That's why this trial and tribulation have to come to perfect us. Okay? Now, so here we find that eventually, the remnant of Jacob shall be made use of by God. Okay? Now, verse 4, when this happened, he shall stand and feed his flock. Now, he refers to who? Who is he? Who is he? Jesus. How do you know? Because verse 2 is talking about what? The Messiah, isn't it? Yeah? Okay? The Messiah. Now, I think class, you need to understand, okay? When we talk about Jesus, we must not just think about the physical Jesus. We must not just think about the physical Jesus. Now, today, let's say in the church here at Newcastle Church, the work of pastoring is being done by the full-time workers or the ordained workers. But broadly speaking, right, this is the work of God. Yeah? Yeah? And this is the work that God has done. Because the work of God, no doubt about it, is accomplished through man. Actually, it is God himself who has done the work. You understand what I'm saying? Right? Now, today I have done something for God. It's not that what? It's not that because, by my own strength I have done the work. Rather, it is by the power of God that I have accomplished the work for him. Okay? Now, this understanding must be very clear. Okay, now we come back. So he shall stand and feed his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And they shall abide, for now he shall be great to the ends of the earth. Okay? Now, so when that process of labor is over, you'll find that the remnants of the people of God shall become great. And more importantly, you'll find that the power of God shall be manifested through them. So this can be seen in the second part, in verse 7 and verse 8, like what I have mentioned before. Okay? Now, now verse 5. I'm going to come to verse 5. Yeah? And this one shall be peace when the Assyrian comes into our land, when he tread in our palaces, then he will raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 princely men. Now, how are we going to fight against the opposing forces in the church? Can someone give me an idea? But here it says 7 shepherds and 8 princely men shall be raised up to do the work. Now, if you see that there are opposing forces in the church, what should you do? How are you going to fight? How are you going to fight against it? How are you going to fight? Any idea? But we have been told that we need to fight. How are we going to fight? Anyone? Is that how you do it? Okay, let's give you an idea, okay? We turn to Zechariah. Start coughing again. Okay, we look at chapter 9. Huh? Again, this prophecy is about the coming King, Jesus Christ. Yeah? Now, I want you to read verse 10. Chapter 9, verse 10. Now, if you read verse 8, they talk about what? Jesus. Huh? And this is mentioned in which book? Huh? You know when he went into Jerusalem, remember that? Yeah? He rode on a donkey. And this is the one, isn't it? So it's in Matthew somewhere 21, somewhere. Yeah? Okay? Now, verse 10. Can someone read, please? Verse 10. I will cut off... No one is reading it, so I'm going to read. Okay. I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem. The battle bow shall be cut off. He shall speak peace to the nation. His dominion shall be from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. Now, here we find that there is contradictions, because the first part of verse 10 is talking about fighting, like physical fighting that we normally understand it to be. Now, verse 10, the second part says, he shall speak peace. Right? This is how you fight. You use the peace of God to fight. Right? This is how you overcome what? Overcome what? Overcome opposition. Now, it doesn't mean that when you see wrongs are being done, whatever, inaccurate teachings being preached in the church, we just keep our mouth shut. We speak out, but with peace. Peace in our hearts. Right? Just like Jesus, when you look at the work of Jesus, this is what he did on earth. He rebuked the Pharisee and the scribe, but he was very peaceful with them. You understand what I'm saying? That is the power. Alright? This is the power to overcome your enemies. Then we need to do the same. Let's say you want to help someone to change. Right? You cannot just shut your mouth knowing that this guy is drifting away from God. And say, never mind, we pray for him, pray for her. Hope that God will have mercy on this person. By the time you realize it, the guy is gone. Right? So what you should do is, you do it in a very, very firm, but very peaceful at the same time. You get what I'm saying? Right? But you need to anticipate what? Attack and opposition from the person. Right? This is how you can win the battle. With peace, the peace of God in your heart. Okay? This is how you fight in the church. When you see confusion in the church, the most important thing is to keep calm. Right? If you can remain unprovoked, you have won the battle already. You have won the battle. You get what I'm saying? This is how Jesus, won the battle. You understand what I'm saying now? Very important. The problem with us is sometimes we cannot control our emotion very well. And I'm included. Right? And this is the lesson that we have to learn. That's why we have been saying spiritual cultivation is so important. Right? If we are well cultivated, then you find that nothing can affect you. Nothing. What? Okay, we come back to Micah. Chapter 5. Now, so you find that when this Assyrian comes into our land, the land, then we will raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 princely men. Obviously, from the description, it's quite clear that, all, these people are like, are very noble, very spiritual. It gives you the idea that they are very spiritual. The number is very small, but it's enough to fight against what? The entire army of Assyria. Okay? Now, can you see now? If you have the quality of God, yeah? The virtues of God. Okay? Let's say only a handful of you, 5 of you. Okay? 5 of you, but all of you have the full virtues of God. You find that you can resist the power equal to what? Equal to the entire army of the Assyria. Okay, this is the way to fight. You don't have to fear anyone. As long as your heart is at peace with God, what you are doing is right in the eyes of God. That is the most important thing. Right? You are not doing it for yourself, they are doing it for God. Alright? Now people can condemn you or whatever, it doesn't really matter, because your heart has the peace of God. You get what I'm saying? That's the way forward. Right? Now look at Jesus. When he was what? Being crucified, did he retaliate? Did he speak ill of a person? No, he did not. He kept his mouth shut. Right? You can see the power within. Right? The power of God. This is the power of God. Right? Okay. Any question? Now, so verse 6 basically says, when these forces, come, then you find that they shall be what? They shall be devastated with the sword. Right? They shall be removed. Right? I think it's always true, like in a conflicting situation, in a situation of conflict, you find that if you are very peaceful, you will not harm yourself. Secondly, you will not sin against God. Yeah? And thirdly, you find that you can control your emotion very well. Alright? And you win the battle. To win the battle means to control yourself, basically. That is what it means. Right? Okay, any questions? I hope I can finish Micah today. Tomorrow we start first, second, third John. We still have one true God to cover. Question? No question? Okay, now, before we take a break, I want you to first look at verse 10 to verse 15. Actually, I should give you an assignment. Yeah. I should have given you yesterday. If you read from verse 10, to verse 15, right? Now, there are different items or like things mentioned here. Verse 10 says horses, second chariots. Verse 11 talks about city, and verse 11 talks about strongholds. Verse 12 talks about sorceries, and verse 12 talks about soothsayers. Verse 13 talks about calf images. 13 talks about sacred pillars and the works of your hands. Now verse 14, wooden images and cities. Verse 15, no, just 14, 10 to 14. Different things mentioned, Actually what I wanted you to do is, to be honest, I want you to go and look for verses to back up, I want you to assign meaning to each. But you need to back up with verses from other part of the scriptures. You get what I'm saying? You need to write down, city means this, blah, 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 blah. Now, I think by doing that, you will come to an understanding why God wanted to destroy them all. Okay? In fact, these are the things that God would like to destroy in the church. He's talking about the church. You get what I'm saying? Is that clear? Yeah? Okay, never mind. No question? Question? Homework. So it means I'm not going to talk about it. Okay, I tell what, I'm a kind person. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a very brief one, okay? And then you need to go into detail. Look for verses. Is that okay? All right, let's say a silent prayer.